When it comes to Destiny 2 Beyond Light, I've shared my concerns of what I may see becoming a problem when the expansion is released. But this is one of those issues that are actually happening right now that I know will become bigger of an issue when Destiny 2 Beyond Light releases and past the expansion. This is something that's tied to not just one thing, it ties to sunsetting, it ties to how we acquire rewards and loot, and on top of this, also ties into specifically the way armor works in Destiny 2. This is something that I've had a lot of issues with for a while now, and it's something that I really wish that Bungie would look into, or I'm really hoping that they are already looking into to fix this when Beyond Light comes out, to make our investment inside of Destiny and acquiring loot a lot more enjoyable, because when it comes to sunsetting, that's going to ruin a lot of the morale of going out and acquiring loot if this loot is going to have an expiration date, or on top of this, there are certain things tied to these things where we basically have to grind every 3 months ridiculously to acquire things that will benefit us in the long run. It's just a never-ending loop, and I mean never-ending. Now, this is tied more specifically on armor, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you have already had this issue as well, and that's why I want to talk about this. But when it comes to armor, I feel like the way that they implemented it is quite messy. In Destiny 1, if you wanted to change your mobility, resilience, or recovery, you just did it inside the subclass. You changed these little attributes that way. In Destiny 2, it's tied to armor. And granted, in Destiny 1, there were random armor stats as well, but it was only tied to our super, our grenade, and our melee. And that was it. In Destiny 2, it's everything. When it comes to armor, they are very, very important when it comes to building your class. But not only this, but it also is important on the affinity tied to this armor piece, because certain mods only work with certain element types of that armor. Now you probably are getting closer to what I'm trying to get at. There is way too much clutter when it comes to our loadouts because of the way that armor is, and it's going to get worse with how sunsetting is, and on top of this, just the way mods are going to work. Because they basically already confirmed that yes, the general mods, the ones that do the Charge of Light and so on, are going to work for certain armor types or sets. But if, for example, you want to use a Garden of Salvation raid mod, you better have something from Season of, what was it? God, man, I don't even remember which one it was called. The Vex offensive one. That one, you're going to need something from Shadowkeep or during that time to have something that actually has the Garden of Salvation mods tied to it. So if you want to have those mods, you better have an armor set that's specifically for that. And that doesn't tie into a lot of different stats that you may want, many different affinities and such. You get the point. There's just way too much when it comes to armor and how it's going to lead to having so many different sets of armor, where also it's going to get very confusing on what is what and what specifically does what for your loadout. In this case, I had a more generalized look at armor where, okay, for every character, I want a helmet that's solar, arc, and void, and that was it. That was the only goal originally. But now, ever since they basically started to express that, hey, stats are very important as well, and you can get high stats like 65 or higher, now, instead of just looking for solar, arc, and void helmets and every other armor type, now I'm also looking for the stats that specifically are for my playstyle. But at the same time, if any of you are like me, we don't have just one specific playstyle, especially when it ties to certain exotics as well. Maybe I want to specifically have a melee and resilience build. So I'm going to have high stats for that. Maybe I want to have my super very quickly and be able to throw tons of grenades, so intellect and discipline will be very important. Oh, but make sure that I have high mobility because I'm on a hunter, and I would like to dodge a lot more, so mobility needs to be very high. So let me make sure I grind for that. You get where I'm getting at even further, I hope. This is messy, and I know that they explained that they can't just combine all of the mod slots or types or whatever into one affinity because they said that there was going to be a lot of lag issues, but I feel like they really should try and do something like that at least. Or in this case, if they can't do that, maybe take a step back when it comes to the choice of the stats, as in are not choice with the RNG based thing. So when it comes to mobility, resilience, recovery, I feel like that should be something that we just choose in our subclass or something separate from our armor. And then when it comes to the intellect, discipline, and strength, those are just like Destiny 1 RNG. I have no idea. I know that they have, and they've expressed, well, if you want to get resilience, you can just put on a mod. But if you're like me, sometimes that kind of wastes a mod slot when you could use that mod energy, the energy of the armor for a more high amount mod that's in the general or not. Like maybe, for example, instead of having a intellect mod, because now that you actually have a lot of intellect on that armor piece, you instead put on enhanced reloading. Or maybe you turn on some of those mods for oppressive darkness and such like that. You get the point. Those kind of things are very important and sometimes are worthwhile instead of being like, well, I have to use intellect because this armor piece does not have intellect enough and I would like to have intellect. Yeah, it's just, those are things that are becoming a big issue, and it's leading to the point where I already know as months and months go by, not even years, just months, because every 3 months we're going to get a new season, and with that comes another grind and sunsetting and so on. It's going to lead us into just continuously grinding and trying to get armor sets that we like that will become obsolete later on, and it just leads to so much clutter. Because, again, you don't have full-on choice on what your build is. If you want 100 strength, you better hope that you actually have a decent strength on the armor set that you have. Oh, but if you're using certain weapons as well, you better hope that you also are using the right elements that are tied to that loadout of weapons as well. For example, if you're using fusion rifles, it better be solar. Well, what if you want to switch to Void? Well, now, first of all, you're going to have to switch the affinity or switch to a different armor stat. And you're going to have to change all your mods. And yeah, it's just slowing down the pace of the game. It's making grinding feel very unenjoyable, feeling more like a chore and a never-ending loop. Bungie needs to change this, and they're kind of doing some good things, for example, with the Umbral Engrams and how those work, sort of, but at the same time, that's not really perfect either. I even thought of the fact that they could have every vendor where they have a Umbral Engram system almost tied to it, where when you turn in tokens, instead of it just being a random engram, you get to choose what you want, and you have the whole tier list, and maybe you level up the Vanguard and stuff as its own vendor as well. Like, so as you turn in tokens or do objectives, you earn things just like the Umbral Engram system to make rewards a lot more rewarding. And also you being able to, for example, with the Umbral Engram where you have a armor focus like intellect and stuff, maybe have something that's tied to armor specifically as an end game where you can choose what kind of armor comes out of it. And I don't mean just specifically, because I know right now it's very generic where it's like intellect, discipline, strength, and that's it. If we're all being honest here, some of us like to focus more on lines where it's like, well, I want a strength and discipline, or intellect and mobility. So when it comes to that, I feel like there should be something where we have more choice, almost putting two things and mixing them, or multiple things and mixing them, making a goddamn armor smoothie kind of thing. That's essentially what I'm basically saying. There's things of where they could fix this sort of, but that is one of the biggest concerns that I'm having when it comes to armor grind, because of sunsetting, because of armor affinity, and because of how armor stats work. It's just going to lead to way too much clutter, and 500 slots inside our vault is not going to suffice. I mean, heck, even 1,000 might not even suffice if this is going to be the case. And I didn't even go into major detail on exotics. I mean, don't even get me started when it comes to exotics and trying to get the stats that you want on those. And not only that, but upgrading them fully, because it requires a lot of materials. And I know they're working on to making that better, but I mean, yeah, it's just too much. When it comes too much, people just don't want to play the game. And normally too much is okay if your game is very expansive. But we have something called the DCV happening, the Destiny Content Vault, where we're losing a lot of stuff. So there's not going to be a lot of expansive stuff to do to suffice. Yeah, you get the point. So that's one of the big issues that I'm having right now when it comes to Destiny 2 that may, of course, lead into Beyond Light if it's not answered and passed. So I just wanted to give my feedback on something like that to show my concerns about something that, yeah, does concern me. And I've actually heard others also being pretty concerned about this and has been bothering them already. So I want to know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. If you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. And if you have your own additions of, thoughts on this or concerns, add into it. So leave in the comments down below. So either way, I hope you're having a chibi-tastic day, night, evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next Chibi Hour. Chibi out.